as Matthew mentioned, the General, Petraeus, who has openly said that the policy on Palestine, Israel, is not good for American foreign policy. We know that this has been written about by Mearsheimer and Walt and others about the need for America to have a foreign policy which is in its interest and not in the interest of Israel. So that, I think, is quite interesting. That I was beginning to totally despair about America, but it seems that there is some opportunity there. The other thing that's come together is that the European Union, and Cathy Ashton, has also taken a much stronger stand than before and met with the quartet in order to also try and put pressure on. So I think these things are important, and they have to give us a little bit of space as the international solidarity movement, in which we have got to, I think, really mobilise as much as build that mass movement, like the Anti-Apartheid movement, so that Palestinians aren't left on their own to just see their land eaten away, even though they are resisting and so on. And that's, I think, important, because the only way to change the world leadership policies, our own and international, the United Nations and the EU and so on, is by saying that there is a mass movement that's not going to let them stay silent, that really is going to make it cost electorally and so on. And I think the general election is obviously important for us at the moment. But that's the only way to change, when there is a mass movement. It's also the only way to change Israeli public consciousness about this. They're not going to listen to anything other than us actually saying, you cannot continue with these policies. There will be a price to pay. And that's where the boycott and divestment and sanctions campaign, of course, comes in, that we can talk about later. And again, Palestine Solidarity Campaign here in Britain has got a reputation in Palestine for delivering, actually, on campaign. They see what we're doing here, partly because of the internet, which is fantastic. It's good to hear about the leads one. Partly because of that, and partly because of Middle East television channels and so on, which do show our work, even if our media doesn't show what we're doing. The Middle East channels do show lots of the stuff that we're doing. We've got this reputation, and I think it's partly that the experience of the anti-apartheid movement here in Britain is one that we can build on. And our labour movement, with all its faults, is one that has got a history of being committed to human rights, political rights and so on. And we're beginning to make headway there in a way that isn't quite so easy in other countries in Europe, and certainly isn't as easy in 10 years ago about boycotts and so on. The whole reception is a bit more progressive. And I think that's why this sort of meeting all over Britain is really important in building the branches. And the other thing that Andy said was this is a mainstream organisation, a broad and mainstream organisation. We welcome anybody, whatever religion or non-religion, whatever politics, if they are on the side of the Palestinians and accept the objectives that we put forward, and they're in our constitution, which you will have to agree with when you set up. And they're not they're not weak aims and objectives, but they are ones that we think everybody can support, whatever their politics or their religion or whatever. The right of self-determination for the Palestinian people, they must decide. We're not colonialists. We're not going to say you've got to have a one state, you've got to have a two state, you've got to have this, that or the other, that kind of state. They must be able to decide. The right of return of the Palestinian people, we absolutely hold to that as being something that we cannot give up. That's their right. Obviously, for the immediate withdrawal from of the Israeli state from the occupied territories, against all of the oppression and dispossession that's been suffered by the Palestinians, in support of their full rights and their struggle to achieve these rights. We support them in that. and to promote Palestinian civil society, democratic rights, social justice, and to oppose Israel's occupation and aggression against neighbouring states because of the situation obviously in Lebanon and in Syria and so on, and in opposition to racism, including anti-Jewish prejudice and the apartheid and Zionist nature of the Israeli state, and in opposition to Islamophobia. Now, I just mention them because I think it is important that we see that these are aims and objectives which any right-thinking person could not possibly object to. And they, when you're discussing, as you were in the pub the other night, who could object to this? Unless they're anti-democratic, they're racist or whatever against Arab people or whatever. So it's important to understand that we believe that we can build the mass movement on the right principles. We don't have to water down the policies and so on, and I think that's very important. And the other thing is that it's a national organisation and it's got its branches. The two must go together because if you're going to influence governments, get big institutions like trade unions on your side and so on, they have to see that there's a power, if you like, behind it. I don't mean a power in the sense of telling people what to do, but a strength, that's the word, a strength if there's a national organisation. But that strength has to come from the work of the branches, where people all over the country are engaging with their communities and convincing them of things. And the branches and the national together, I think, is really the way to build this broad and mainstream organisation. During the election, I think we'll kind of see that in practice. When the international movement took up boycotts, it took many years. Some people, those of us who do remember, it actually took decades to change anything. But what it did was give a structure, if you like, to the international movement. We could all do something, and that's the beauty of this campaign. We could all do something, and it helps to raise awareness. Firstly, it raises awareness here, because we're talking to people about why we're doing these things, but also it raises awareness in Israel. They have started to ask, why is it these people are behaving like this? Now, they get very angry, we know that, and so on. But sooner or later, they're going to have to start thinking, well, the world is saying this. It's not just, they can't label us. They do still label us as anti-Semitic, but of course we know that's something we can refute absolutely comfortably. Not at all. The best thing that could happen for the Israeli people is that they end their occupation and actually recognise the equal humanity of the Palestinians who are their neighbours. So I think that's important. So the campaign, I think, is useful because we can work as individuals, we can work as groups, we can work as institutions like the trade unions. And here we've, of course, made a big step forward this year with the Trade Union Congress. And I think we've got a few trade unionists in the room. I don't think anybody should underestimate how hard it is to move the Trade Union Congress to take action like this on the issue of Palestine. And we haven't gone as far as we want them to go, but we've started. And so the Ban Settlement Goods campaign, which is, the card is going to MP, so I assume they're going to announce the election tomorrow, which means in a sense the card we'll be using afterwards, after the election. But that, we've already started using it, I know, amongst ourselves. But it's a way of getting trade unions to take action. Trade unionists who perhaps have never discussed the issue of Palestine before. And that's the aim of this campaign. Who could object to banning settlement goods? Because settlements are illegal, therefore settlement goods are illegal. So we've got that's joint with the TUC. We're going to have a leaflet. It's not available from